Bimbo had just given birth, just a few hours ago, but instead of celebration, her father pointed at her husband and said, "You are not going home with this man." Nobody moved, not even the nurses. Then Charles stood up, walked to the door and locked it. "With all due respect, sir," he said, "no one is taking my wife anywhere." The air in the room changed. You could feel it. Bimbo, still weak, still lying on that hospital bed, opened her mouth to speak, and what she said next shattered everything. This is African folktales with Nsinem. Come closer, because this gist, it's about to get very messy. Bimbo wasn't always like this. She was her father's pride, his only daughter, well brought up by a man who would do anything for his princess. And Bimbo, she was a good daughter, the kind who made the right choices, until she met Charles. They met at a gym, and from the moment she saw him, Bimbo could not take her eyes off him. I mean, which woman with blood flowing through her veins could? Charles was gorgeous, a tall glass of dark chocolate, beautiful eyes that could captivate any woman, and a set of well-toned abs that spoke for themselves. But it wasn't just his looks. He was intelligent, charming, the kind of man who knew exactly what to say and when to say it. Before anyone could blink, they had exchanged numbers, gone on a few dates, and just like that, they were inseparable. When Bimbo introduced him to her father, Mr. Duke was not impressed. He didn't have a solid reason, nothing he could point to and say this is why, but something about Charles didn't sit right with him. Still, Bimbo was already deep in love, and she continued. Her love for him was hot and heavy.
The only time she almost reconsidered was the day she met Charles's mother. It was not hard to see where Charles got his good looks from. Comfort was a beautiful woman, but the moment her eyes met Bimbo's, the smile on her face disappeared. She looked her up, slowly, from head to toe, then said nothing. That silence alone was enough to make Bimbo uncomfortable. Bimbo greeted her politely, but Comfort barely responded. Bimbo came bearing gifts, carefully selected things she thought Comfort would like. She handed the bag over with a polite smile, but Comfort didn't even look inside. She took the bag and casually tossed it on the couch, just like that. Bimbo's smile faded instantly. In that moment, she felt it. Cold, sharp, undeniable. She was not welcome. Later that evening, Bimbo spoke to Charles. She told her fears, that his mother didn't like her. But Charles laughed it off, told her she was overthinking, told her his mother would come around. "My mom has no choice but to love you, because I do," he said. And Bimbo believed him. But that was the moment she should have walked away, because listening to Charles would become the biggest mistake of her life. Soon after, Charles proposed, and Bimbo said yes, happily. The wedding preparations began, and that was when Comfort truly stepped in. It started with the guest list. Comfort insisted certain names had to go. Friends Bimbo's father approved of were quietly removed without explanation. Then came the wedding colors. Bimbo's choices were rejected outright. Comfort replaced them with her own selection, leaving no room for discussion. Bimbo tried to stay calm. She told herself it was normal, that it was okay for Comfort to have a say, but the real battle came with the venue. Bimbo had chosen a place that meant everything to her, the same venue her parents had used, a place filled with memory, love, history. But Comfort shut it down immediately. "We are not doing it there." No explanation, no negotiation. The decision was final. Bimbo turned to Charles, expecting support, expecting him to stand with her. But Charles simply said, "Just let her have this one." That was the first time Bimbo felt it clearly. She wasn't marrying just Charles. She was marrying his mother too. And Comfort was not going to share control. The real confrontation came 2 days later. Bimbo walked into the living room determined, her voice steady, but her hands shaking slightly. Comfort sat like she already owned everything. Calm, composed, waiting. "Ma," Bimbo began carefully, "about the venue." Comfort didn't let her finish. "It has been decided." Bimbo swallowed hard. "But I already..." "No," Comfort cut in sharply. "You didn't decide anything. You suggested. I corrected it." Silence. Bimbo turned to Charles again, her eyes searching for him. This time, he didn't even look up immediately. When he finally did, his voice was softer but heavier. "Bimbo, please don't make this hard." That was when it hit her. Not anger, not argument, just quiet defeat. Comfort stood up slowly, adjusting her dress. "In this family," she said coldly, "we don't do things based on emotion. We do things properly. That venue is too local, too old. We are going somewhere better." Then she walked away, leaving Bimbo standing there, realizing for the first time, this wasn't her wedding anymore. It was Comfort's. The wedding day finally came. Loud, colorful, beautiful, everything a wedding should be. Guests filled the hall, music echoed through the air, and for a moment, just a moment, Bimbo allowed herself to believe she was happy. The ceremony went smoothly. Smiles, laughter, cameras flashing from every corner. And then it was time for the first dance. Bimbo's heart raced as Charles took her hand, pulling her gently to the center of the hall. This was it, their moment, just the two of them. The music started. They moved slowly, carefully, eyes locked. But barely a few seconds in, a hand suddenly slipped between them. Comfort. She stepped right in, smiling like nothing was wrong, like this was completely normal. "Let me dance with my son too," she said lightly. And just like that, the moment was gone. Bimbo froze. Before she could even react, Comfort turned, waving her friends over. "Come and join us." Within seconds, the dance floor was crowded. Laughter, noise, movement, and Bimbo was no longer the center of her own wedding. She forced a smile, because what else could she do? The night went on, but something had already been taken from her, something she could never get back. Finally, the ceremony ended, and for the first time that day, Bimbo felt relief, because now she would finally be alone with her husband. In their hotel room, she sat on the bed, her heart full, her mind racing with everything the day had been. She smiled softly. This was what she had been waiting for, just the two of them. Then, a knock, soft but firm. Bimbo frowned slightly. Who could that be? Charles walked to the door and opened it, and immediately Bimbo's smile disappeared. Comfort stood there, already in her nightwear, like she belonged there. "Good evening," she said casually as she walked straight in. No invitation, no hesitation. Bimbo sat up slowly, confusion written all over her face. "Ma, is everything okay?" Comfort didn't answer. She walked straight to the bed, pulled back the covers and sat down like it was hers. Then she looked up, calm, certain. "I'll be staying here tonight." Silence. Bimbo blinked. Once, twice. Surely she didn't hear that right. "My friends are in my room," Comfort added casually, adjusting her pillow. "I told them to make themselves comfortable." Bimbo slowly turned to Charles.
waiting for him to say something, to laugh, to correct it, to fix it. But Charles only scratched his head lightly, avoiding her eyes. "It's just for tonight," he said. Just for tonight. That was the moment it became clear. This wasn't going to stop. Not after the wedding, not ever. That night, Bimbo lay stiff on the edge of the bed, her back turned, her eyes wide open in the darkness. Between her and her husband was comfort, breathing slowly, peacefully, like nothing was wrong. Bimbo didn't move. She couldn't. Every time she shifted slightly, the bed creaked and she would freeze again. This was not how she imagined her wedding night. Not like this, not with someone else in between them. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears that refused to fall. Because what exactly would she say? That her mother-in-law had taken her place, that her husband had allowed it. Morning came slowly, and nothing changed. What Bimbo thought was just for one night became a pattern. It started with small things. A knock on the door, then Comfort walking in before anyone answered. Sitting in their living room for hours like she lived there. Calling Charles away mid-conversation. Interrupting quiet moments. Finishing his sentences. Answering questions that were not directed at her. And every single time, Charles allowed it. "She's just used to me," he would say. "Don't take it too seriously." But Bimbo felt it every single time, like the walls were closing in, like she had no space that was truly hers, even in her own home. There were days she would sit quietly, watching them talk, laugh, exist so easily together, while she felt like a guest in her own marriage. She wanted to speak. Many times she almost did, but the words never came out because nothing looked wrong from the outside. Charles wasn't violent. Comfort wasn't shouting. There were no bruises, no visible scars, just silence, control, and a slow, suffocating feeling she could not explain. How do you complain about something no one else can see? How do you tell your parents that your marriage doesn't feel like yours anymore? Tell me, if you were Bimbo, what would you do? Do you think this kind of closeness is normal? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. While you're there, do click on the like button if you're enjoying this story and share it with a friend or two that would enjoy it. Back to the story. So, Bimbo kept quiet. She smiled when she had to, adjusted when she could, and slowly she began to disappear. In the middle of all that silence, something changed. Bimbo found out she was pregnant.
It should have been joy, celebration, something to hold on to. But instead, it felt heavy, complicated, lonely. She held the test in her hand, staring at it for a long time, as if the meaning would change if she looked hard enough. When she told Charles, he smiled, hugged her briefly, said the right words. But even in that moment, something was missing, because before the feeling could settle, his phone rang.
Comfort, and just like that, he was gone again. Days turned into weeks. Bimbo could barely spend time with her husband. He was either at work or at his mother's house, fixing something, helping with something, answering her calls. Always something. Always her. The first trimester hit Bimbo hard. Morning sickness that wasn't just in the morning, weakness that drained her completely. There were days she could barely stand. Eventually, she had to move back to her parents' house just to get proper care. Her mother stayed by her side, watched over her, took care of her in ways she didn't even realize she missed. One afternoon, her father sat beside her, watching her quietly. "Where is your husband?" he asked. Bimbo forced a smile. "He's busy with work," she said quickly. "He'll come round." But Mr. Duke didn't respond. He just kept looking at her. Because he knew
He knew that tone. He knew that smile. He knew his daughter was lying. But he said nothing. And somehow, that silence hurt even more. Months passed. Slowly, Bimbo grew stronger. The second trimester came with relief, a bit of energy, a bit of hope. She returned to her husband's house, determined to try again, to fix things, to make it work. Because now, it wasn't just about her anymore. But something else was coming. In 5 months, it would be Charles' birthday, and it was also Comfort's birthday, the same day. And for the first time in a long while, Bimbo felt a spark of excitement. She wanted to do something special, something memorable, something that would finally make her feel like a wife, like she belonged. So she started planning, carefully, quietly. For months, Bimbo poured herself into that day. She took Comfort's preferences into account, the colors she liked, the kind of venue she would approve of, the food she enjoyed, the guests she would want to see. She planned Charles' side too, the music, the drinks, the little details that would make him smile. She wanted it to be perfect, not just for him, but for both of them. Maybe, just maybe, this would finally make Comfort see her differently. The night before the celebration, everything was ready. Decorations set, calls made, final checks done. Bimbo sat down slowly, one hand resting on her stomach, exhausted but satisfied. Then suddenly, a sharp pain. She froze. Another one, stronger this time. Her breath hitched. "Charles!" she called out, her voice trembling. He rushed in, confused. "I think it's time." Panic filled the room.
Bimbo told Charles to take her home.
Things moved quickly after that. Her younger sister grabbed her things, helped her out. Charles picked up the hospital bag. "Go ahead," he said quickly. "I'll be right behind you." Bimbo nodded, holding on to that promise. The car ride felt endless, pain coming in waves, stronger, closer, relentless. At the hospital, they wheeled her in immediately. Her parents arrived not long after, worry written all over their faces. "Where is Charles?" her father asked.
"He's coming," Bimbo whispered. They waited. Minutes turned to hours. Calls were made, over and over again. No answer. Not from Charles, not from his mother. Bimbo held on. Through the pain, through the exhaustion, she held on to one thing. He would come. He had to come. She wanted him there, to see their child come into the world, to be part of that moment. But time kept passing, and he didn't show. Around 5 in the morning, with tears in her eyes and strength she didn't know she had, Bimbo gave birth. Their child was here, and Charles wasn't. The room filled with a different kind of silence, not the one from before. This one was heavier, final. By the time the sun fully rose, Bimbo lay there quietly, her baby beside her, her parents close by. No excitement, no celebration, just a quiet, aching emptiness. Then, at about 10 in the morning, the door opened. Charles walked in. The room went cold the second he stepped in. Charles wasn't rushing. He didn't look like a man who had been in a frantic car accident or a desperate search for a hospital. He looked well-rested. He was wearing a fresh shirt, the one Bimbo had carefully ironed for his birthday dinner. He walked over to the bed, a small, guilty smile on his face. "Bimbo, I'm so sorry. I know I missed it." Bimbo didn't say a word. She just looked at him. Her father, Mr. Duke, stood up slowly from the corner of the room. The silence was so thick, you could hear the hum of the hospital monitors. "You're sorry?" Mr. Duke's voice was a low growl.
Your wife was in labor for 12 hours. Your child was born 5 hours ago. Where were you, Charles?" Charles cleared his throat, avoiding Mr. Duke's piercing gaze.
"My mom. It was her birthday too, remember? She had a small collapse last night. The excitement was too much. I couldn't just leave her alone in the house. She was so distressed. By the time the doctor left and she fell asleep, it was already 4 a.m. I must have drifted off." Bimbo felt something inside her finally snap. It wasn't a loud break. It was a quiet, cold realization. The collapse, the birthday, the proper way of doing things. It had all led to this moment where she was second place even at the birth of her own child. Bimbo remembered the same collapse she had the day Charles was supposed to join her on their ultrasound appointment. Charles picked being with his mother over coming to see their baby during their first scan. She had a collapse? Bimbo's voice was a whisper, but it carried through the room like a shout. "Yes," Charles said, gaining a bit of confidence, thinking he was being understood. "You know how her heart gets when she's emotional. I had to stay. But I'm here now. Let me see the baby." He reached for the bassinet, but before his hand could touch the plastic, Mr. Duke stepped in between them. "No," her father said. His face was like stone. He turned to the nurses who were standing by the door, frozen. "Please help my daughter gather her things. She is coming home with me." Charles froze. "Wait, what? Sir, with all due respect, this is my wife. We are going to our home. My mother is already there waiting to help with the baby." And that was the final straw. Mr. Duke pointed a finger straight at Charles' chest. "You are not going home with this man," he said, his voice shaking with a rage he had been holding back for months.
"Not today. Not ever." Charles stood up, walked to the door, and locked it. "With all due respect, sir," he said, his voice turning hard, "no one is taking my wife anywhere. This is my family." The air in the room changed. Mr. Duke didn't flinch. The nurses didn't move. Everyone was looking at Bimbo, the weak, exhausted woman on the bed. Bimbo looked at her father, the man who had protected her whole life. Then she looked at Charles, the man she had chosen, the tall glass of dark chocolate, who had turned her life into a silent prison. She looked at her beautiful daughter, and she had to make a decision that was best for both of them. She opened her mouth. Her voice was steady. "Charles," she said, "unlock the door." Charles turned, surprised. "Bimbo, honey, tell him we're fine. We just need to go home." Bimbo looked him dead in the eyes. "Unlock the door, Charles, because my father is right. I'm not going home with you. I don't think I ever truly lived in that home anyway. I was just a guest in your mother's house, and today the visit is over." Charles' hand dropped from the lock. His face crumbled. For the first time, the charm was gone. "You're leaving me? Over this?" "No," Bimbo whispered, pulling her newborn closer. "I'm leaving because I finally realized that in your world, there's only room for two people, and it was never me and you. It was always you and her." As the door clicked open, Mr. Duke stepped forward to pick up her bags. Bimbo didn't look back. She didn't look at the toned abs or the captivating eyes. She just looked at her child, because for the first time in a long time, Bimbo was finally finding herself again. And that, my people, is the end of this gist. What do you think? Did Bimbo make the right choice, or should she have stayed and fought for her marriage? And Charles, is he a villain or just a victim of a mother who couldn't let go? A marriage cannot thrive where boundaries are absent. Love alone is not enough when respect is missing. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, then you'll enjoy this story on your screen right now. Click to watch, and I'll see you there.